did you do to me? No, 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 I'm not that girl I used to be. I drink, I smoke, I curse, yes, 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 you can see. Ain't nothing healthy about my life. You've created a monster. Wow. Something about the way that you do me. I have to love you, but I can't stop. Tell me so screaming, I end up ripping you out of your tank top.
Hey guys, it's Yahshell with BlackDomesticDiscipline.com, and today we have Chief Yuya. He is here talking about his very controversial documentary called
All Whores Go to Heaven.
All Whores Go to Heaven. Isn't that like bam? That's just like bam in your face. And so we're gonna talk about a little bit about domestic discipline, about my story, but we really want to get into his story and find out why is he doing this and how are whores gonna get in heaven and who are the whores and all that good stuff. So can you give us a rundown of the documentary?
Sure. Okay, so the documentary All Whores Go to Heaven was really something that I had in my inner eye for about 2-3 years now. And essentially the concept, it came forth just really dealing with a lot of women in the work that I do. I do a lot of counseling, and of course as a priest, do a lot of spiritual work for people. And sometimes there's certain things that we strive and we look for that are inherent in us and are natural born that we can place in a contextual environment of sanity that makes sense. So there's some people who are born with certain dispositions, and if you live in a society that doesn't really value them, then you start to almost feel like your purpose was you were never born with a purpose, or you were never born with any viable talents. You have people who can run really fast or climb trees really high or really compassionate. But when you go to a public school environment, you're not really graded on those things. Well, in the same token, you have certain females who are born with the ability to not only master their sexual expression, but to use it to manipulate and navigate their way through the world. And unfortunately, because of some of the misconceptions about how we look at horology, or how we look at even women who have sexual mastery, some of them get categorized into the slut category, or a lot of times what ends up happening is that they begin to have a lot of unwanted sex. And a slut and a whore is different in that a slut, she'll engage in sexual relations for emotional fulfillment, and when it's over, she typically feels like she was taken advantage of. Someone's walking away snickering and she's wiping herself clean, as opposed to the whore, she walks away snickering and the other person is still riding high off of the fantasy that she just gave him. So a lot of it really came from just really, as far as the original impetus, trying to speak to women, even young girls, and really speak to that inherent sense of sexuality that they had in them that really wasn't getting a healthy platform or healthy explanations as to where to express that and how to use that to really fulfill what they came to be and do.
So are the sluts going to heaven as well, or just the whores?
Just the whores. Yeah.
And how can you said basically the whore walks away happy, but like what are some of the other attributes of a whore?
Sure. One of the key things, you look at alpha qualities in people, and a whore understands that emotions you can use emotions as a compass, but you never use emotions as a stimulus or impetus towards action. So she's able to separate her emotional yearnings and her emotional leanings from what it is that she's trying to accomplish and get done, and that helps her in her mate. So when you're dealing with that sense of horology or the whore, she's looking for a mate that can actually evolve her, as opposed to one who can just fulfill her emotionally or pacify her or stroke her ego. Ultimately, what turns her on is someone who can deposit light or deposit information, or in some arenas we say game. you know, or ism, and really use that information to bring her to a loftier place in life. So her relationships are pretty much all of them are transactional, because she's always very clear on that transactional exchange and the value of her sexuality. And she typically links with men, the ones who she finally submits to, the one who she finally commits herself to. He's not necessarily interested in her sexuality, but more interested in her level of knowledge and information, and how that can further fuel and support and cultivate what it is that he's building. You know, so there's a symbiotic respect that's happening there. She's respecting his life, and he's respecting her fertility. And anything outside of that is almost like fair game that they can both use in order to fulfill their combined and collective goal.
Interesting. So a whore, how many partners does she have to have before she's labeled as a whore?
She doesn't have to have any partners. Being a whore has nothing to do necessarily with having sex. In fact, as I've said, you know, other times the best whores don't have sex. You know, her time.
But, okay, I'm not understanding, like,
Sure.
then why not just call her a woman then? Like, what is so special about the word whore for you?
Well, it's
I'm trying to find out exactly what it is.
What's a woman?
A woman is a female. A female human, you know? The human is the female energy of the man.
So what's the difference between a woman and a girl?
The woman's older. She's most likely more experienced. And her body's grown up.
Is she emotionally more mature? Is she physically more mature?
She may not necessarily be emotionally mature.
Right. So we could almost say that you can have an adult girl. You can have.
Well, that's one of the things that I preach, because, you know, with my husband disciplining me, it's because I have those emotions that they're not quite developed. So
Sure.
instead of being peaceful, there's times where I run my mouth, I get in trouble, and I get disciplined. And it keeps our relationship balanced. So, yeah, I understand that part of it.
But would you say that your ability, not, I don't mean to turn this into a quiz.
No, no, but we have to get clarity.
You know, like your ability to recognize your own self-shape, your ability to recognize your limitations, your boundaries, and where you're trying to push some of those limitations and those boundaries out are one of the hallmarks of womanhood. Because what makes, you know, what begins to make someone a man or begins to make someone a woman is their ability to be quiet and listen.
That's true.
You know, so listening to yourself and objectively stepping outside of yourself and saying, ooh, I did it again. Ooh, I have this issue, or that same thing I didn't like in my auntie or my mother or my cousin, I got it too. So I'm going to need some help. I'm going to need someone who can kind of help me to transition over this place that I'm currently at. That's one of the hallmarks of womanhood or manhood.
That makes sense.
You know, now, when you're dealing with a whore, though, first thing to understand is that the word whore is also a derivative of the word out, which is also a derivative of the word war, as well as Horus.
Okay.
Horus, Greek form, originally was Heru, meaning light, that which is above. It also meant heaven. And this was the Messiah form. So, in ancient times, you had Heteru, or who later became known as Hathor, you know, in Grecian, the cow deity. But Het itself means house. Heru is light, right? Or heaven. So Het Heru was the house of light, or the house of heaven. So the difference being there is that the whore is very in tune with her responsibility and accountability to sustain light on the planet.
Okay.
So
that was going to be my next question. Like,
Okay.
is she doing something productive for not just her family and submitting to a good man, but community as well?
Yeah, you know, because again, being that light holder, it's almost like, you know, being part of the Illuminati. You know, she's illuminated by the light that she puts in him. But, you know, in order for light to sustain. So when we're dealing with the idea of that interplay or that symbiotic relationship between that male and that female, again, dealing with that whore and that light, you know, it's always the feminine energy or the dark energy that cradles light. You know, darkness is a cradle for light. And the larger the light, the larger the cradle has to be in order to sustain it. So what she does is she makes sure she houses it. Het Haru, again, house of light or house of heaven. She makes sure that those men who are operating in the community or operating in the world and bringing a higher sense or elevated sense of awareness and an elevated sense of purpose, that they're cradled and protected and nurtured and cultivated. You know, so ultimately, her housing that, it keeps him protected in a certain manner. That's the role of a real whore, and that begins before sexuality. But that within itself, that interplay between that type of light or that type of man and herself is sexual in nature.
Okay. So my next question would be, am I a whore? Like, do you consider me a whore? This is so funny talking about. Like, who would you, is she a whore? You're a whore? You can speak. You don't want to speak, it's fine. Well, she's a beautiful lady behind the camera. I won't, if she doesn't want to go out there and she don't want to be put out there, that's fine.
Okay, I didn't want to speak.
No, it's fine. I can edit out.
No, because you said, "Are you a whore?"
Yeah.
Like it's the way that it's said.
Yeah.
In culture, the way we say things indicates what we're really saying. Because if I
so I said it wrong.
No, you didn't say like. It's like you have to be clear that, well, and you say, you know, are you a whore? Of course, I'm not just a female. Like,
okay. That female, that sounded bad too. That kind of.
Well, see, to say when you're just a female, it's
Yeah.
like to say, okay, there's female squirrels.
It's
just female squirrels, just like there's male squirrels.
So yeah. So it could be a
so
squirrel.
there's no real distinction. But when you say, well, you know, you're a whore, that puts some context into, well, what are you speaking on in terms of
What kind of woman are you?
Yeah, what kind of woman are you?
Okay.
And I think culturally, that's the divide between what he's speaking to and what people automatically are assuming. It's that mental culture of, well, what a whore is. Is a whore someone relegated to sex, or someone that's relegated to sexuality on a cosmic level that is holistic in their life versus someone that's just
whore, like holistic. I see how they can go together, and it's good. That's why I can't wait.
It can also be sexual.
It can also be sexual. Okay.
Yeah, of course. There's nothing
wrong with that. I'm cool with that. But it's good to get the female perspective, because you have a lot of female supporters. That's another thing that shocked me, is that a lot of females actually support you and they understand it. So when she explains it to me, it sounds to me different than the way you would explain, I guess, because you're just giving me the male perspective of it, and you know, she's giving me the female. But now it's starting to click together.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, any woman that's going to be around me is going to be a whore, or I wouldn't allow her to be around me.
Okay, so that answers my question. I'm a whore.
Well, no, because you're not my woman. You know.
Okay.
So I mean, any woman that you see in my presence, or you know, is with me or consorting with me, she's consorting with me because she serves a purpose.
Okay, gotcha.
She's upholding or doing something that I'm requiring for her to be done. So she's housing and sustaining my light.
Okay.
You know, so you know, but again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a sexual thing, but what if it is? Again, she's using, you know, her tool and her gift is sex. You know, women bring sex to the planet as men bring knowledge to the planet.
We birth things into the universe through sex. So yeah.
Yeah, well, we both do that.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, it takes.
Because the reality is you kill things in the universe.
That too.
We're the ones who actually create them. So when you put them together, you know, because you're destruction, I'm construction. You know, but you need.
That explains it why a lot of men are builders.
Right.
Yeah.
And women are the cleansers.
Yeah.
They're
We clean the houses. Yeah,
right.
I like that. That's what I'm talking about.
It's a method to the madness.
Right. I was thinking during this interview, how is he possibly going to explain this? How? And this is all making sense.
Yeah, because it's very similar to domestic discipline. There are some very basic tenets that have kept society strong for many years, and they're so basic that there's a huge effort by overlords to keep us away from them. You know, because like just like if you start talking about domestic discipline, there's already programmed responses.
Yep.
Automatic, because everyone's going to say the same thing.
The same question. I swear my frequently asked questions page. The same questions over and over again. I tell them, you guys just go there. I answer this like millions of times.
Right.
But yeah.
That lets you know that there's a program at play.
Yes.
And if what you were talking about or what I was talking about was so difficult to conceive, then it wouldn't be so much effort around keeping people away from it. It would say, here, just take it, because you're not going to be able to.
You're not going to use any.
Right.
Yeah,
it's not going to make sense to you, but clearly
this
it is.
can actually build like nations, and I think that's what people are scared of.
Right. You know, and again, there's overlords who are scared of building nations, but ultimately too, not everyone is designed for this lifestyle.
That's true.
You know, this is the lifestyle of rulers. You know, so in saying
the
that,
gods.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's
I agree.
A better way to put it, actually.
Superheroes.
Yeah, it's right. So those, you know, some of these things are not to be explained to the masses. It's not for general consumption. They would never really understand it, because you're always going to have in any system, you're going to have a ruling class and you're going to have a servant class.
And I think that's what within every race, like there's going to be so-called black rulers and so-called black servants.
Absolutely.
The black servants are going to be serving the black rulers.
Right, right. So when you get an opportunity where someone who's kind of vibrating on that frequency is sharing that information and giving it, that's why the title, it's All Wars Go to Heaven. Here, it's right in your face. Mm-hmm. Now the first thing, there's some simple questions to ask yourself. For instance, what is heaven? You know, now you find out again that Horus, from Horus means heaven. Mm-hmm. Now you understand why I titled it that way. Because the Hor is the heaven. Yeah. You see?
And then another way to look at it is that we create the heaven here on earth.
Absolutely.
We don't have to wait until.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. But it's through that symbiosis and that dualistic relationship that heaven is created. Because when we come here, when we birth into the planet, we separate. Mm-hmm. So when we get an opportunity to work together in tandem, we recreate that unity that we had, you know, in the other unseen space. And that's, like you said, that recreation of heaven, where you get that as above, so below. So that same interplay between masculine and feminine polarity is the same interplay between a whore and her mate.
This is so classy. I mean, this is so super classy. I love this. I've never even, it's shocking. So, okay, there's a couple interesting personalities out there. Okay. You have the type of guys who are into polygamy. That's a big topic right now,
sure.
Having more than one wife. So they're controversial.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everything that we do, it's like you said, it's putting this big puzzle piece together, because whatever couple is not into domestic discipline or don't need it, or the woman doesn't need to be disciplined, then it's not for her. But then she could probably move over to polygamy, or she could just stay in her regular relationship. It's now we're finally seeing solutions when
sure.
years ago, especially before the internet, we weren't seeing any of this. We couldn't even talk about stuff like this without being like stoned to death.
Right.
Even though I had this feeling in me, I love when a man dominates me, a good man, not a thug.
Sure.
I like that feeling. This was when I was young, I could never say that. Like, black women be like, you was a stupid bitch and you was a doormat and this and that. I'm like, girl, please. No, I'm not. I'm a business owner and I have a very strong personality. And so they didn't get that. So this is a good thing.
Yeah. And like you said, that desire to be dominated is really you wanting to go back to your core value. Mm-hmm. The core value of a woman is her receptivity. Is her willingness to be saturated with light and enveloped by light, and to really remove her ego, to completely flatten it. So that desire to be dominated, whether she says, I like my wrist held when I'm engaged in the act, or to be choked, or this or that, it's that inner, in those moments when she's having those type of relations, she can be a little bit more honest, because there's a stripping and cleansing of ego, and she can say in that moment, yes, I want this. Yes, I want to be spanked, or this or that. But the one who's able to say it outside of that experience, that fantastic experience, and come to that in a sober moment, is the one that's more powerful. It's just like the man who can show affection outside when he's not horizontal. It's empowering, because for the most part we show our affection, you know, through our sexuality as men. You know, you're going to get nibbles and bites in places that we wouldn't normally do if we're just sitting and talking, you know. So having that ability to go into that place, but then reenact that, and like you say, if I'm doing something that's a little off, or I know I need to be brought back into alignment, and I know that there's a certain language that works perfectly for me when I need to be brought back in alignment, and I have faith in the individual who I've given that role to, which is empowering within itself, because you signed the contract. You said, this is what I'm going to negotiate with you. I need you to be this for me.
Consent.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that within itself is empowering. So, you know, like those who may have said that, like, you're dumb. No, I'm not dumb, because I've actually thought about it.
Right.
Which is the opposite of dumb. I've actually thought about what I need in order to be a better individual. That's not dumb.
Right. So this documentary, when is it? Where you, where people can find the documentary, your website, and contact you if they want to do an interview or talk about it, just all your information.
Sure. Well, social media is at Chief Yuya, ChiefYuya. I Black I Films is the name of the film company. The letter I, the word black, the letter I again, films. And allwhoresgotoheaven.com is the actual website if you want to go there. We have a Kickstarter campaign that we're running right now, and we definitely would appreciate anyone who would like to be a part of the experience, or anyone who is in the life and wants to finally hear some, you know, some truth and some light shed on what the life really is. And so allwhoresgotoheaven.com, and like I said, we have a Kickstarter campaign. You can find a link there for anyone who wants to contribute and be a part of this, you know. And of course, there's rewards that come, you know, and merchandise and stuff if you want to contribute. And after this, I actually have a web series that I'm working on as well, which is it's just it's more metaphysics. It's almost like it's like an urban teen metaphysic and kind of gritty piece I'm working on, and people are gonna like that one a lot.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
That's good. So congratulations, ladies. We get to be whores now. Woohoo! We can be public whores.
You can be honest about your whorology.
We can be honest now. So yeah, go check that out.